7 p.m. Hi, I'm Dr. Jenny Cristerna, the moderator for this evening's event. I'm a referee here in the state of Illinois, and I do a significant amount of work with professional athletes and amateur athletes. I am actually out of the USOC in Colorado Springs, and I am really excited to be here because we have an amazing panel for you all to talk about a very common topic. We know that every referee has to deal with it, but we also know every player and every coach has to deal with it because they're usually on the receiving end of it. So we're going to talk about dissent, and we have 4 fantastic people who can give you some different perspectives so you can learn how to manage dissent before it gets out of hand, before we have to book somebody. And they're going to allow us an opportunity, if you're a young ref, to get a feel for what dissent might look like from beginning to end. And we're gonna have an opportunity to have 2 fantastic referee coaches. And one of those referee coaches is also a regional referee, and you'll get to meet him in just a moment. So without further ado, oh, Jenny, did I miss anything? Do we need to thank anyone or acknowledge anyone? We're good? Fabulous. So our first referee coach is Boris Vukovic. Wait, Boris, do your Mr. America.
Yep.
He's a referee coach. How long have you been reffing?
A long time. When I had hair.
When you had hair?
When I had hair.
I think there's a little peach fuzz still there, no? And then we have Shane Richards. He's our regional referee as well. He's also a referee coach here in the state of Illinois. There you go. And then we have Joey, is it Casey? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
All right, from Hersey High School.
Mhm.
And he is our player panelist today. And so we're going to be gentle with him because you're in your senior year?
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't want to get him, we want to have him nice and relaxed by the time we're done, right? And then we have Mr. Scott Walls from FCX, and he's a coach, and he's going to be on our panel today. And you're going to get a wonderful range of experiences and understanding around the concept of dissent. And this is going to be really important because by the time it's done, you'll have not only a referee's perspective at a high level, the elite level referees, but you'll also have a player's perspective and a coach's perspective that will allow you to better understand how you can manage that dissent so it doesn't get out of control. So, you guys ready to go? All right. So this is what we're going to do. And I don't want to put you 2 on the spot first, but they gave me $5 to do that. So you're going to go first, right? So, so one of the first things I want to ask you, Scott, and I'll let the elder speak first because you're wise, you see. Okay. So I want to ask you, what is the definition of dissent for you? How do you define dissent?
It can be obviously verbal in nature. But yeah, strictly from a coaching standpoint, it's harassment of the ref, possibly of the other 2 players. But it's the level, the intensity. Excuse me. They do it go again. Or?
Nope, you're good. So you said it's harassment. You have it as like harassment of the ref.
There's obviously, it's a scale. It's a scale from here all the way over to here. And, but mostly I encourage when you're at a game, it's verbal.
Okay, it's verbal. Okay.
From coaches.
All right. From the coaches, it's verbal. There's some level of harassment. There's a continuum of how much harassment, but for the most part, you're like it's verbal and it's kind of harassing.
Yeah, it's questioning calls. It's if you don't think it's being fairly ref that day, and that's pretty much it.
That's fair. Thank you. All right, now here we go, Joey. What do you think dissent is? What's the definition of dissent from your perspective as a player?
I'd have to say communication a lot. It gets really intense when we're playing. It can be aggressive out there, and I agree with a lot of what Scott said. Just things like that he said.
So you're agreeing with Coach Scott, and you're saying on top of that, it's a lot of intense communication. All right. Anything else you want to add to that?
That's all.
You sure?
Yeah.
You're a senior now. Okay. No pressure. All right. So we're going to go to our referee coach, Shane, second, right, in the second segment. But we're skipping over him, and I don't want anybody to think I'm leaving him out because he'll start to
Yeah, I'll start to dissent.
Yes, touche. So we're going to go over to Boris, and Boris is going to explain to us what dissent, the definition of that, what dissent really is. So, Mr. Boris, take it away.
So we actually have the Webster definition, right? So the Webster definition says to withhold approval or to differ in opinion. And an example of that would be 3 of the justices dissented from the majority opinion. So we're talking about Supreme Court judges, all right? This is not something that's a bad thing. They're just saying they have their own opinion, right? But what we really want to look at is what the IFAB book says, all right? And that says public protest or disagreement, verbal and or physical, with a match official's decision. This is punished by a caution yellow card. All right, so can someone tell me what those 2 differences are? Does anyone have any comments on that?
And if you're participating via Zoom, feel free to type into the comment section or to the chat section. We're not going to be doing the open mics because there's way too many people, but we do want you to participate. So feel free to share. We would love to hear your thoughts.
Guys, a couple things. One, they're having, some of the guys on Zoom are having a really hard time hearing you. So we'll get some really crummy audio, so speak up a little bit.
Okay.
2, I haven't fixed the chat function, it's disabled right now.
Oh.
If you have a question, put it into the Q&A and we'll feed it back to the crew, right? And Q&A is actually better for this anyway, because that'll let us track it and identify whether or not it's been answered.
Okay, so I'll tell you guys what, we'll do Q&A, so we won't do live questions. We're going to improvise. It's like a soccer game. So we're going to just improvise, type it into the Q&A. We're going to make sure we hold our mics up closer to our mouth so that way everybody can hear. So yeah, so Boris, is there anything else with that definition?
So basically what we want to distinguish there is that not every dissent action is a cautionable offense, all right? There's dissent of, you may disagree with an official, but you are respectful of that official. What we want to identify here and really talk about today is what those dissents that are cautionable, okay? And whether that is going to be something that is a verbal action or if it's a physical action, whether it's, you know, throwing a ball on the ground or whatever. So those are the distinguishes, the items that we want to really describe here today.
So Boris, I just want to make sure I'm clear because you guys know I like to reframe everything because we have refs that are brand new, so welcome. And then we have refs that are very seasoned, regional, national refs. So what you're saying is it's dissent by what they say, so verbal, or it could be physical.
Correct.
So it could be something like what they say, how they say it, and or it can be them like throwing a ball, kicking the ball because they're frustrated, they don't agree with your call, but it's all around the call that the referee has made that they disapprove of or disagree with. Did I get that?
Correct. And we'll see some of those examples in the videos that are going to be coming up.
Fabulous. All right. Now, I want to come back to, I'm going to go to Joey first, Scott, because you look a little nervous. All right. So pick up your mic. Now, Joey, now that you've heard the actual definition of dissent, what's changed for you?
In-game playing, just there's some players talking to each other. And even if players don't agree with calls, they can get like, I guess, physical, maybe just like frustrated, like with body language and just the way they carry themselves. I guess that's what I'd say.
So you're thinking, oh, if I get frustrated, my body language, the way I carry myself, that might qualify as dissent, or no, is that?
Yeah.
So that might?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what's changed in your head. And I want to just check with Boris. Is he right about that? If they get frustrated,
be
their
right,
body
but-
language?
Who is that directed at? Are you frustrated because of the play and what happened at yourself or your teammate, or is the frustration being directed towards an official?
It could have been a play in the game like your teammate could have done, or an official's call that you disagree with.
Right, but what we wanted to talk here today about is the dissent that's towards the officials.
Okay.
All right, so we want to make sure that the officials that are, part of this, call today is that they understand when it's a frustration of a player upon himself or maybe, with another player, or is that frustration being directly, going towards the official in a way, right? I mean, what do you think some of the causes of dissent are?
Mainly if there's a call and official like wouldn't explain why that something had happened, that could cause frustration to me because I was the captain of my team. And if a referee just made a decision and he didn't explain to me why my teammate was frustrated about a call and he didn't talk to me, that would make me frustrated. But if a referee like comes and communicates and explains why, that makes me more comfortable.
You felt wronged, correct?
Yeah.
Right, and you therefore want to express yourself that, hey, I was wrong, and therefore I want to let you know this, right?
Again, Mike's here.
A little higher?
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're having a hard time hearing you.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So Joy, what you're saying is, and I just want this to be very clear for our young refs. So if you feel like the referee made a call that you didn't like, but they came to explain like, oh, yeah, he got the ball after he tripped the player, then that's something that you could live with. So just being able to not justify, but to explain what they saw is very helpful.
Exactly.
Got it? Did I get all of that or did I miss something?
Yeah, just explaining the call and why it was called.
Mm-hmm.
That's just big. Yeah.
That's big for you as a player.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's fair.
Mhm.
Do you want to add to that, Boris, or?
Well, I'd like to ask Scott, what are the sort of,
I mean, for me, for a coach, it comes down to, just consistency. Is he fair? Is he consistent with both teams? And just following the letter of the law.
Mhm.
As for like, if I'm dissenting, I mean, for me, it's a very gray area and it's part of the game. Where you question or ask, why was that call made, stuff like that. But if it's constant harassment of a referee, it becomes tough for him to manage the game.
Mm-hmm. So has your definition or understanding of what dissent is changed after Boris shared the definition?
No, I mean, it's pretty clear cut, but you have three parties involved, you know what I mean, all their varying opinions as to,
Well,
level of
well, the
that's
main
where we get
opinion is
later.
the refs, right?
yeah.
So,
He's ultimately, that's
right. So I know you were saying that, there was harassment and it was verbal. The physical part, do you take that into consideration now
I
too?
mean, I think that has to be minimized completely,
Minimize?
Oh, like nipped in the butt.
Oh, okay. I was
That's
like,
no,
kick that ball all
there's
the
no
way
need
across
for
the
that in the
field.
game. I mean, the physical thing, I think the refs have to be very firm. right
Yeah.
off the bat.
Okay,
Whether that comes from a coach, parents, players. They have to be very stern.
yeah,
Otherwise things get out of hand very fast.
excellent. Thank you. That was great feedback. Anything else, Boris?
I think that's it for right now for definitions.
Okay, and so we're gonna move to our second question. Is this coming in clear?
We have a question indirectly that came actually out of the chat. One of our referee attendees suggested that dissent includes persistent and profane.
Persistent and
One
profane.
of our referee coaches or one of our other panelists like to comment on the inclusion of profanity as part of dissent.
So I want to repeat the question because our Zoom coordinator does not have a mic. So there's a participant who wants to include persistent and profane as part of dissent. Boris? Shane?
I'll take this one. So we'll cover that here in this next section with quantity of times and how many times something happens, and we'll cover all that in consideration. So just hang tight on that question.
Okay, fabulous. So, and that's a nice segue, actually. You guys are ahead of us. You guys are so smart. I'm so jealous. I wasn't that smart ever. So the next portion, we're going to talk about our practical guidelines. So you heard Shane speak about considerations. And so for those of you who are refereeing, we know that there's like 200 and something considerations or whatever for different calls. And so Shane is going to go over the practical guidelines for considerations for dissent. And he's extraordinarily good at it. Being a regional referee, he's pretty much nailed this. So Shane, we're going to have you talk about it after we get Joey and Scott's perspective on practical guidelines. So what do you think are the guidelines that referees have And we'll start with, you went last? Who went? So we're gonna go with Joey. Joey, what do you think the practical guidelines are for referees when they're considering whether or not to give a player a card for dissent?
I think practical guidelines are, depending on the situation, but if a player is completely acting like physical or like throwing the ball, for sure, I agreed with Scott with what he said, that should not be allowed at all, and that should be an immediate card. But if a player is just trying to communicate and discuss, but I think if he cusses, the player may cuss a ref, then that should be a yellow card. It just depends how they phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if they're doing anything physical,
Yeah.
then you're like automatically, yeah,
Yeah.
they need to get booked. If they're using profanity, yep, that's a yellow card.
Mhm.
Anything else? Because you're a player, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you've never gotten a yellow card for dissent. I know that. You have a face of a non-dissenting player. Now, do you see that face? His mom probably pinches his cheeks all the time, right? But for those players who do get yellows for dissent, what do you notice gets them that card?
Probably just being like angry in the moment. Like if they don't agree with the call in the moment, they just start like they just get mad at the ref, and they might be like saying it under their breath or something. The ref may hear, and that may just, I think, just the call in general, just the immediate emotions cause them to have a reaction. Then they get
So,
booked.
so they don't check their emotions, or maybe their
Yeah.
emotions get the better of them, and that might get them into some trouble.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair, right? All right, so, Coach Scott, what do you, so we're gonna have you take the
So
mic.
this is from like a referee perspective?
Yeah, well, as a coach, like, what are the considerations, yes, from a
I-
referee's perspective, like,
I
I'm
mean, I
thinking
put
about
down
that.
things like the context of the game. Is it a major rivalry? Is it a big time championship game? The level of play, I think, has to be looked at a little in terms of how gray the area is. I wrote down intensity of their dissent and how constant. Like, is it just nonstop?
So I just want to make sure I get all of that, because I know some people are trying to organize it a certain way in their head. So you're talking about not just, whether it's verbal or physical, you're talking about how often are they doing it?
Yeah,
How intense is the dissent?
Yeah.
And then you're also saying, and what what we said, that's consistency. So did I miss? I feel like I missed one.
If this is a regional championship, a
Ah.
national championship, the level of play is super high. There may be a little more leeway. The ref may know some of the players, as ref them quite a few times.
Mhm.
But I think it comes down to the intensity level and consistency. Like if it's a constant barrage,
Right.
and any good ref's gonna ask the player, you need to stop this. They'll ask first, they'll tell them, and then after that, they've got to make a decision.
So if it's they'll ask first, they'll tell second, and then they'll book.
I think that's the
Okay.
referees that do it the best. That's what they do.
Okay, fabulous. And so now Shane's going to actually tell us what the practical guidelines are. So especially if you are a newer ref, I want you to make sure you take notes on this. And if you're a more seasoned ref, I want you to really sit and just kind of allow yourself to take it in a way that might be a little different, because Shane has an interesting way of explaining things that makes it really accessible. So I'm going to hand it over to Shane to share the guidelines.
So what Jenny is mentioning when she says guidelines, she's meaning the U.S. soccer considerations for decision making. If that's the first time you've ever heard that, I'm going to make sure that Jenny sends a link out with this document at the conclusion of this call. What this document is, it's a 260 considerations, something like that, that effectively break down each area. So you've got when you're thinking about giving advantage, when you're thinking about calling a foul, when you're thinking about dissent or body language, all of these things have bullet points that you use and you ask yourself these questions. And that helps you make a decision on what the specific topic is and how to arrive to the correct answer. It's not going to give you the answer. It's going to say, you're going to ask yourself these questions, and the more it meets the criteria of those questions, the more likely that answer is punishable by a caution, a red card, etc. So Joey and Scott mentioned a lot of things like frequency, level of play, who was it directed at, what point in the game, where on the field was it directed. These are all basically undefined considerations. So when we as referees, as you move up and ask yourself, what is dissent, which we've already defined, now we need to look at, is what I'm looking at dissent? And we do that by pulling out the considerations, as I've mentioned. So there are 8 questions that fall into this category. Not every single one is applicable at any given time when determining dissent. However, you ask yourself these questions as you get higher and higher. You basically run through them in your head. The more likely this is dissent is the more yes answers there are. So, does the player show dissent by protesting verbally, by word, as we mentioned? Okay, is that a yes or no? If they do, it's more likely dissent. Does the player show dissent by protesting non-verbally? Action. Are they throwing their arms up in the air while also dissenting verbally? Is there no verbal? Is it just an action? If the answer is yes to both of those, it's more likely to be dissent. Does a player act in a manner that shows a lack of respect for the game? This is what Scott was mentioning when he was speaking about physical dissent. If a coach is throwing something, that is a lack of respect for the game and something that you can remove from soccer because it doesn't need to be there. It's not part of the game, so it's showing lack of respect for it. Could dissent have been avoided had the referee or assistant referee intervened more quickly? This one's subjective because if you have, like Joey mentioned, sometimes games get heated, right? So the level of play matters, and you have to know what's at stake for these teams. So if the referee or assistant referee can intervene to prevent dissent from occurring, that is helpful, and it may reduce the need to give a caution for dissent in that particular situation. But again, you're running through all these questions to try to determine, is this, what I'm looking at, this scenario, is this dissent? Does the referee support his or her colleague following a reaction by the player to a decision made by the assistant referee? If Boris is on my game, I'm the referee, Boris is the assistant referee, and Joey comes up and dissents at him, does that by definition cover a match official? The answer is yes. Any match official, assistant referees, fourth officials, referee. Dissent is dissent to any match official. So if I support my team, if Boris is receiving dissent from a player, does me as the referee not dealing with it make it worse? Do I deal with it as the referee? The correct disciplinary sanction, is the correct disciplinary sanction applied? This is what Joey was mentioning. Did the referee mess up? Did I make an error? Is he upset because I messed up? That needs to be taken into consideration. If I've made an error and the players are frustrated, that's less likely to be dissent because they are frustrated because of my action. Now, they can't go crazy, but you need to take that into consideration. Hence the consideration. Does the referee correctly differentiate between frustration and dissent? Again, can a player be frustrated at a decision I've made? They may not agree with it, but they need to accept it. There's a difference between what Boris defined the Webster definition of dissent, which is disagreement, versus what IFAB, laws of the game, US Soccer define as dissent, which is the public protest or disagreement with a match official's decision. Two different things. Does the captain of the team show dissent by protesting? This one is a little, I'm going to call it dated, because while Joey said he was the captain of his team, maybe Joey commits a lot of dissent. Maybe Joey's not exactly the best role model for his team. So you have to understand, is this captain someone I can use to help me manage the game, or are they a liability? So you need to take that in consideration. But we look at all of those questions. Ask ourselves in that moment, what I'm looking at. You ask yourself all those questions, the more yeses, the more likely it's dissent and punishable by a caution. The more no's, the less likely it's dissent and more of a disagreement.
Beautiful. I loved how, do you see how he just made that so easy? Him and Boris are just awesome. All right, so I'm going to circle back and I'm going to start with our elder. I'm just kidding. I'm going to start with Scott. So Scott, has your understanding of dissent shifted given the guidelines that referees actually use, or, our newer referees are learning to use when they're evaluating dissent?
I mean, it's nice to hear that there's a whole framework behind it and there's a whole process
Mm-hmm.
of those, the questions that a ref can ask himself basically while he's doing the game.
Yeah.
To determine whether it's dissent.
Mm-hmm.
It's a checklist.
So has it changed how you thought about how referees give yellows? Has it helped you to understand, oh, they probably thought through it in a certain way and I've met a certain number of criteria?
Well, I mean, if the refs are truly following a process like that, they're gonna make, a much better decisions when it comes to dissent.
Mm-hmm.
When-
Did you know those guidelines, those questions that we asked?
Not all of them. I mean, not like written out like that, but
Mhm.
I would think every ref would have their process.
Okay.
Well, you covered some. You
Mhm.
covered, that was the surface level of it. That's just this is the technical understanding of, as referees advance and want to get better, this is what they ask themselves. But you understand the core concepts, as does.
Because even if you go way back into playing days or early coaching days, I mean, the better refs always, you kind of knew their little guidelines before they were going to give a player or talk to you as a coach.
And so
And
this.
it was clear,
And this-
this is what they do.
And this is what you were speaking to, is the referee consistent? Meaning, is the referee using these guidelines? Are they asked? And so when you see that consistency, you're less likely to dissent because this is what they're calling.
Yeah, and I'm
Every-
gonna manage my players that way too. I'll have respect for the ref, like, guys, let me handle anything from here on out, keep your mouths quiet.
hmm
He's doing a good job.
Okay,
So-
even if it's not called in your favor, he's
Yeah,
doing a good job?
exactly. It's
Okay.
just, for me, it's just fairness and consistency. And if you know what you're getting right off the bat and, from the first 10 minutes of the game, is it the same way by halftime? I mean, that's important.
Okay. All right, Mr. Joey, all eyes on you. Has it changed? Has your understanding of dissent changed after listening to the practical guidelines?
Yes, I mean, it's shifted a little bit. Obviously, it's not going to be a perfect called game. That's impossible. Nobody can do it. Just the fact that a ref is consistent and they consistently call the game, like with the steps that they just explained of how they make the calls, that players appreciate a lot. And yeah, just really consistency is a big part. And I think it did shift with what they have to go through, like the steps that for each call. That's
Mhm.
that's a big part.
Yeah, how many players do you think actually know what the guidelines are when we are actually looking for dissent and by the time we give a caution?
Probably not many at all, little to no.
Yeah, yeah. And that, I want to just circle back to something you said before, which is explain it to us.
Yeah.
Right, because we don't know, we're players, we're out here trying to win this game, get this ball, here's the big tournament, right? So help, just give us the short, one sentence, this is what I saw, this is what happened, and then I can live with it. I don't have to like it, but I can live with it. Did I get that?
Yeah, exactly. Just so like even a player, if they make a mistake and they thought they did something that was okay, even if the ref explains it to them, then they'll do it differently. So then later in the game, they can do it correctly.
Yeah, and I want to go back, Shane, to you, because Coach had said that there were, I want to say, he was talking about consistency, but like intensity and just kind of, do they say something and, ask and then tell and then card? How does that play out in the considerations when a referee, is noticing dissent? Say somebody said, and then they ask and they tell. How does a referee apply that, the ask, tell, book or card?
So really, what we're thinking about here is what they're doing. You're talking about two pretty much different things. So if they do minor offenses consistently, you could potentially be a persistent infringement of that. But really, what we're talking about here is that I think is you say something after every call, right? Like it's small quips, just ref, blah 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 blah. Well, then you can run yourself, into consideration. Is this impacting the match? And then you can run through your questions and think about it like, okay, you're no longer thinking of the single incident. Now you're thinking of them all as a whole. is that impacting the match? And there will be a certain time when one is going to be effectively, it's going to increase the match temperature permanently. What that means is it's going to have a permanent effect on the game from that point on if you don't deal with it. Because other players are going to get on that and think it's okay. And now you're going to have more than just one player dissenting. You're going to have multiple, even though it may be minor. There's going to need to be a line in the sand at some point that says, this is it. We're done. You're going to receive a caution for this. And it's going to prevent a lot of problems in the future, especially if you don't deal with it.
And so I want you to elaborate on something else too.
Sure.
And we know Joey has never done this. He has never been a captain who just causes grief, right?
No.
Okay, there you go. Good answer. So what about how should referees talk with players as they notice dissent is starting to escalate? Because Boris touched on that and he just like, fed that one right to you. What are some of the things that referees can do to manage dissent before we have to card?
So that really boils down to what your officiating style and personality is, but you don't have to just remain completely silent and wait for them to say the magic words or get to a certain point and then you just pull out a yellow card. No, if Joey is giving me small pieces of disagreements that are starting to rise to the level of dissent, I can go to him, approach him, say, Joey, number 5, whatever, you're almost to this level, okay? I need you to bring it down or you're risking getting a caution. And at that point, you may then be able to have a quick conversation with him to find out why he's upset. If it's something that you can change or improve, or perhaps he's getting clipped behind the heel every time and you don't notice that or something like that. Now you can fix that problem if you're missing something. This goes back to one of the considerations, right? Did I miss something? Is the referee incorrect? And he could be upset because I'm making an error. He's brought that to my attention. Boom, no dissent because I've corrected my mistake. What was the second piece of that?
No, just kind of how can they start to manage
right.
that dissent?
So, and then the second piece is you keep player safety. Player safety is paramount. So if players are starting to dissent because they feel like they're not being protected or they need to take matters into their own hand, you need to call more fouls and make the game safer. So you may need to, what most people would say is, bring the game back under control or wrangle it in or something of that nature. Effectively, what you're doing is you're calling more fouls to keep the game safer. There's still fouls and they're still part of the game, but you need to call it tighter effectively.
Perfect. Does that help? Do you guys have any thoughts or comments about what Shane just added to? Does that help?
I think he explained it well.
See, there you go. Gold star for Shane and Boris. All right, so we're gonna move it. I know we're a few minutes behind, but I do want to check with Jenny Miguel is our Vanna White of ISRC. So, but we also have we have a few questions. Okay, so what are some of the questions that we might have?
So we had a couple questions that came in. One was we had asked to go back to our question from earlier about the profanity, and specifically for Joe and Scott. What are some examples of language that you, hopefully not you, maybe your friends or you've heard that you look at and go, this is marginal or this is really across the line, and we expect that to get sanctioned if it gets used on the field? So
the question is, as a player and as a coach, what do they know we're going to get cautioned for that? They said something, they did something. We're not going to even argue with that. Yeah, we earned it. What would that be for each of you?
I mean, there's frustration, like as it's happening, it's not like at anyone. There's frustration just like at yourself or like a teammate, but as soon as it's like direct at a ref, immediately there should be a caution. But it's just, yeah, it's just if it's like effectively at someone, at a teammate, at the other team, or at a ref, then it should be a yellow or a caution. But if it just happens and you say something out loud, then it just, I don't know, it's just out of frustration.
So I'll give you a really clear example, okay? Joey shanks a shot on goal and he screams, "What the F?" at the top of his lungs, okay? He's frustrated at himself for his own performance. if he is in midfield and feels that he was fouled or something like that, and he turns to the referee and goes, "What the F?" That is completely different than what he just did for the goal. Those are two completely separate situations. One is dissent, one is frustration. The frustration may or may not need to be punished depending on how demonstrative it is and what environment you're around. I don't know if a U12 game would be the appropriate place to have that. You know, that's when you need to make your best judgment decision as a referee. Does this need to be punished? But it's frustration. And you have to understand that. It could be dissent, but it's Joey being mad at himself versus turning and being dissentful to the match officials. Remember, public protest or disagreement, verbal or physical, with a match official's decision. That means Joey's upset because of a decision I made. He got upset with something he did. Two totally different things.
So Shane, we call that the 3 Ps. What are those for the referees who just need to have a quick reference?
Okay.
What are the 3 Ps?
So the 3 Ps, was it public? Meets it. Provocative? Yeah. And was it personal? That third one's the one that's missing in the scenario between shanking the ball and directing it at a referee. Public, provocative, personal. All 3 of those need to be met in order for there to be a caution in most situations. That's a kind of a secondary consideration. That's more of practical advice. But since he did not direct it at the referee and it's more of a just out in the open, it's less likely to be dissent. Hopefully that's clear.
Thank you. It was.
What you had just said, the words you were using, is this dissent or is it,
Well, I wouldn't go there.
what words did you use though?
I understand, but this is not dissent.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
make sure we
So,
give that definition, right?
okay, so what Boris is insinuating is that it rises to the level of foul and abusive language, which is a red card. Okay, so let me take a step back there and change the word from what the F to, are you, that doesn't work for gold, but,
Give me a break.
yeah, I don't know, just something. Yeah, so they say damn it, something, and then, or damn you, and that's different, right? It's provocative, but it's personal. I made it personal. That's the important part. That's the part you need to know. If it's not personal, probably not dissent.
Now, I want to go back to Boris, because Boris, I forgot to ask you, and this was a big thing because I know a lot of our newer referees and even and some of our seasoned referees, who can get carded for dissent? Who can get booked for dissent? Because some of the referees thinks it's just the players and the coach.
Who can get booked for dissent?
Who can get booked for dissent, buddy?
Pretty much anyone that's dressed and ready to play on the field and anyone that's got a training uniform on. Yeah.
Okay,
But, in all seriousness, it's all the, any player, any substitution, any bench personnel, and that includes a trainer, a coach, anyone else that might be, assisting, along the bench. I'm sorry?
Anyone on the game day roster?
Yes, anyone on the roster, so.
and so what if a referee hears something from a bench, Boris, and they're not sure who said it? Who gets that card?
Well, you're gonna turn to the coach, you're gonna talk to the coach. And then you're either gonna have to ask the coaches, if he's gonna accept it, or if they're gonna, fess up on who did that.
So the coach gets the card if the person who did the dissent cannot be identified. I just want to be clear.
The senior.
The senior coach,
Senior
the head
coach,
coach
yes.
gets the card. Okay.
Correct.
Did you guys know that?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So I know we're definitely behind time, so we're going to move on. We have Professor Pedro, and he's the professor because he wears glasses and he looks like one. So he's going to be our video person, and Boris and Shane are going to actually do what we call a video review. So enjoy when you take a look at this, and he's going to show you various examples. I think we're doing 2-3 videos of what dissent might look like. Don't make fun of the uniforms that the referees are wearing. They were back in the day. So I will hand it over, I will hand it over to Boris.
I need to share it, right?
Yeah.
Already optimized.
Can you see it over there?
Yeah.
Go ahead and play it.
Don't worry about the call.
Do not worry about the call. Do not worry. They're going to walk you through the video review.
Don't necessarily need some.
You want to hear it?
You know what he's saying.
It's all how you do.
You need some space, Scott.
Effectively, the coach is upset.
So if we didn't have sound, do we have dissent by action? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes? If we have the sound on, which we did a little bit, but you can definitely hear and you can definitely see by the video that he's saying something very loudly, and it's not to his players, it's over to what? What's that? A little higher?
Yeah.
Sorry. He's dissenting towards who? Correct, right. So can we agree here that this is dissent? This is not just, I disagree with you. Right? Scott, do you have any,
No, I agree.
do we have a picture of you
He's
doing
making
that?
it personal. He's making it personal. He's running out of the coaching box. He's on his tiptoes.
You hit all the spots, right? You ran out
hammer
of,
isn't right there. You
ran
can
out of
see
the
it.
technical area.
Yeah.
And if you actually
He's
look a
probably done
little
this
bit
quite a few
closer, he's
times.
actually on the field a little bit.
Yeah.
That part. I don't know if you guys heard Coach Scott. He said he's probably done this a few times. See,
It's body
coaches know.
language. We've all coached against those coaches. So. One of those coaches.
Joey, do you have coaches like this?
No, I haven't.
Good.
Yeah.
Have you seen other coaches like
Yeah,
this?
I
Yes.
have.
And what do you think of them?
They're psychotic.
Exactly. So these are the things that we should not be managing. This is not something we manage. This is something that we actually show a card, a cautionable card for, okay? You can still have a word with them, but you're still gonna be showing that caution. Okay? Well, we good?
All right, and so now Shane is going to do the next video. Were there any thoughts or anything that we need to come back to on this one? Are we good? We're good? Okay. And so remember, to our Zoom attendees, our virtual attendees, if you have any questions or comments you just want to share with other attendees, feel free to type them in and, we love your participation.
So pay attention to inside the penalty area here, right? If you can see the cursor. Go ahead, Pedro. And again, don't worry so much about the contact. We're looking at the player. Okay, rewind it if you would, just after the, yep, right there. Okay, so the first thing that you need to run through your mind again is the considerations. So what are we looking at here? Obviously, the player is what? Unhappy with the decision. Yes, they disagree with the decision. So there's the disagreement there. But remember, there's a difference between disagreement and dissent. So does this rise to the level of dissent? He's obviously disagrees with the call. So let's look first at his verbal or at his nonverbal, so his visual actions. So he has one hand gesture, perhaps, two, a few more. Okay, so thinking about that, does that rise to the level of physical dissent? is that enough to say this is worthy of a caution? Keeping in mind that he just got a challenge that went against him and he disagrees with the decision. Now, let's go through the considerations. Is this public? Okay. Does this player act in a manner that shows a lack of respect for the game? Keeping in mind now, look right here. The referee's already made his decision. He's giving a caution here. He's reaching into his pocket at this point. So everything after this point, it doesn't matter. So those extra hand gestures back there, he's already made his decision. So back it up right when he pulls the caution. So think about the distance between the player and the referee. Would you say that is a close distance or a far distance? Far distance. So if that player is saying something to the referee, it doesn't appear that he's shouting at the top of his lungs, right? Is that, we can't really tell with this video, but we're going to go into the assumption that this player is not yelling. He's not exacerbating his voice to try to scream his frustration, okay? So if he's not doing that, is that a normal speaking distance? Do you think he could say something, the referee would hear it? No. So that means we're exclusively looking at his body language here. So the referee has made his decision after maybe 1, 2 hand swipes. How often does that happen in a game? Scott, if you would, or actually Joey, you just got tackled in the penalty area and you think you got fouled. You're frustrated, yes?
Yeah.
You think you just got taken from.
Mm-hmm.
Would you think that emotions would be high at that point?
Yes, for sure.
So, is what this player does, in your opinion, unreasonable? As an unreasonable reaction?
No, because it's in the box, the situation. It's a little unreasonable, but
In your opinion, is this player dissenting to the referee from that decision? Based upon the scenario. Thinking, again, you think it's a foul, and you think the referee just made an error.
yeah. It was a bad call.
Okay. So now, again, thinking to the consideration, basically, did the referee make an error? So we're looking at potentially thinking in the mind of the player, he thinks he just got taken from. He thinks the referee made a mistake and he's reacting accordingly. Therefore, if there's no verbal, so he didn't say anything dissenting that we're taking out of the equation, the body language of the player, he's frustrated. He disagrees, but it doesn't raise to the level of dissent. And the reason why is because this is a reaction immediately following what he perceives as an error. He disagrees with the decision, but he doesn't protest it. He's moving into the next position. He's continuing on. This is a situation where we as referees need to wait rather than trying to quickly pull the trigger on this, because this is not a situation where the player needs to be dealt with immediately. He may go on to dissent by what we mentioned as continuing and keep going down the line and go. Then it becomes dissent. But this at this point is not yet dissent. Are there any questions about that here locally or on the Zoom as to why that is the case? Yes.
Well, we're thinking maybe he did it before. If he were disagree with the ref before, so maybe he.
From a previous decision.
Yeah. Maybe.
Okay, so when we're looking at videos, remember it's in the context of what information we have available. So it's just this snapshot right here. That's it. That's what we're thinking about. But yes, if that's true, he asked based upon prior. Maybe this is the 6th or 7th time the referee messed it up, quote unquote. Yes. So he's built it up.
Is the player walking towards the referee?
His body language. So we pay close attention to the player who is coming off the ground there. He is not walking in an aggressive way to the referee, correct? It's more of a, he's walking away. We call that, he is preparing for the next phase of play. So he realizes it's a corner. He's walking away. He's not storming towards the referee. His body language is not necessarily aggressive. All of that factors in to our decisions. Any other questions? Trevor, do we have anything there?
He wasn't trying to fake the foul, was he? Trying to fake the foul.
You tell me.
I've been there.
So the referee's in a good position to see, yes? He's made his decision. That's what he goes with, right? So we're not judging the decision. Does the player go down? No, I don't believe so. I think this is a hard challenge. But what we have to consider is the dissent part, right? We're not evaluating the contact or the challenge. We're evaluating what happens after that. So this player just got done with a hard challenge. Now, here's the action. Was it dissent? It doesn't meet enough of those questions. It doesn't meet yes on enough of those questions to say this is dissent. Okay?
Beautiful. And we have we have time to do, we're at 7:51, Professor Jenny. Do we want to do Q&A or do we want to do one more video? One more video.
If you can get time on this video.
Okay.
We will have a couple questions. I think
Okay.
we can address them pretty quickly.
Boris, you
Okay.
wanna-
Of course.
This one, Pedro may actually address all the questions. Okay, so, indirectly. No.
That.
So remember, for those of you who are in Zoom land, if you have questions that you did not share or want to share now from earlier segments that we had on the panel, go ahead and type it in the box and we will get to as many of them as we can. Trevor will be screening and pull questions for us to answer before we end this discussion.
Ready? Go ahead.
All right.
Is the coach public? Is he public with his voice or is he public and or with his body language? Both, right? Does it continue on? Not sure if that was an apology to the AR or not, but as you can see there, this is this exact, again, where we cannot have our officials not sanction this. Everyone, including the camera person there, caught the audio across the field. Let's see, what do we got here? Shane, you got anything to add to this? I mean, this is pretty straightforward.
Keep in mind, these are like 12 girls at a grassroots level. So understand your context of where you're at. Like this, if this continues, let's say he didn't get this and this was deemed acceptable. Just imagine how you end up with that coach at the high school level that we just saw. That's how you get that kind of stuff because this isn't dealt with. So this, while it's a little more tame, is, in my opinion, is equally as bad, if not worse, than the clip we saw at the beginning.
Did you all just notice the girl that was staring at the camera with the grin on her face? Kind of going, she can't believe it, coach is doing this. So, I mean, if the players get it, we should be getting it. And, you know, and the ref here does a good job, goes over, addresses it, because, you know, we can't deal with this like this. So, you know, this is an easy one. This is a slam, you know, out of the park kind of call. It's the little ones, the ones that are, we always talk about where they build up, right? It's, you know, complain about this call, 5 minutes later, complain about that call. You know, those start to build up. And then when you have players that turn to a referee and say, how can they talk to you that way? When the other team acknowledges the fact that the team is not respecting you. All right, so we need to make sure that dissent, as we have defined it here, is sanctioned appropriately. All right?
Awesome. See, you guys had two amazing referee coaches, and I'm just gonna ask coach and player, let me see, Joey and Scott. What is it like for you when you see players or coaches dissent from your own team? What is that like for you? What does that feel like for y'all?
I know that if I know that they're gonna get a yellow card and it's obvious, then I try to pull them back because it's just unnecessary. And if it's a teammate, I'll tell them to come back or push them back. But if it's your coach, you can't like really stop them.
Scott's like, yeah, try me.
I mean, normally if the coach has something to say, for the most part, they're arguing for the player's side for safety or for a call.
Okay.
I
Scott?
mean, for me, it just comes down to if it takes away from their level of play, their focus, and stretch from the game, then it's annoying. But, you know, otherwise I don't get that offended.
Okay. All right, so we got questions and we have 3 minutes. So Trevor he took one question per minute. Get ready, Shane and Boris. You guys are on point. All right.
So two of them actually are go along with the last video we watched. And that is, how we handle dissent vary with the level of play? I.e., do we handle dissent differently if it's U12 girls than if it's U18 boys or adults?
So I'm going to repeat the question. Do we handle dissent differently, referees, based on level of play, whether it's the U12 versus, girls versus like a U18 boys?
So we showed two examples, both coaches receiving cautions, the video 1 and video 3, right? One was in a stadium, clearly. The other one was in a park, grass fields, grassroots level. Both dissent, both dealt with. So it depends on what your environment is, but dissent, as we've defined it, again, public protest or disagreement, verbal or physical, with a match official's decision, punishable by a caution. Doesn't say it has to be punished with a caution. It's punishable by a caution. So given the situations, that's when you as a referee need to decide, when is this crossing the line? Where is my line in the sand? I need to end this now in this game or it's going to get worse. I think clip 2 gives a good example of that because, like the gentleman in the back mentioned, we don't have context of the rest of the game. So in isolation, that clip wasn't dissent. However, if that's the second, third time that's happened, now it might rise to the level of dissent because it's going to start influencing other factors of the game. So yes, it matters with the level. Yes, it matters with the environment, but you still cannot allow dissent to damage the game. It still must be dealt with. Doesn't matter if it's U12 girls, as we saw, or the high-level boys game we also saw.
And I'm going to just add to that, he said, you have to know what your tolerance level is. And managing dissent is really about your personality, how you talk to people, how you use your charm or your charisma, your humor. Everybody has their own thing. And so I generally don't have problems with dissent because I use mostly my personality. However, if you don't know what that is for yourself, you need to try to figure that out, discover how do people best respond to me when there's a lot of conflict? How do I need to show up to really bring down the temperature? Because you're the thermostat, not the thermometer. as the ref. You decide how high something will go and you can decide when to bring it down. That is your job. And so I just wanted to include that. And it's 8 o'clock. Can we do one more question? I know we might have to stop. One more, Jenny?
I think we can lead over just a couple of minutes.
All right.
Without hurting anything. It's
All right.
important.
Jenny's really the boss, Jenny Miguel. She's the boss of everybody. So just so you guys know, if you see her, just do like this.
Let me go ahead and give you the other two questions.
Sure.
And you guys can divvy up how you want to answer them. So the other two questions, we hear frequently as referees, variations of call it both ways, which we all hate. And what game are you watching? Usually in a sarcastic tone. Do expressions of that nature from coaches or players qualify as dissent?
So the question is,
That's the first one.
oh,
And
good,
the
okay.
second one. And the second one is understanding that players and coaches, especially at the grassroots level, frequently are dealing with newer or less experienced referees. How should they be trained to deal with referees who aren't as good at understanding what dissent is?
Okay. So which question you guys want to answer? Because we have to just pick one. You gonna want the first one or the second one? The first one. So the question is, how do you as a referee manage dissent when it's more of a sarcasm, like a underhanded attack, for example, call it both ways, and what game are you watching, ref, that kind of thing. So which one do you want to take that?
Well, I think that Shane has driven home the considerations. And again, you can just use the considerations on that. If it's offensive to you and you're the one on the receiving end as an official, it doesn't have to be blatantly, bad language or, it just says if it's offensive and then you're protesting it, whether it's sarcastic or not, you're still dissenting the call. If you want to be a little more thick-skinned about it and talk to a referee or the coach about it or whoever says that and say, hey, I think you were being sarcastic there. No more. And you can deal with it. You can manage it. But, that really is up to the discretion of the official. If it's offensive enough to you, then you deal with it. But obviously if it's very, very public and everyone knows it's very sarcastic, again, use your considerations. It's a public act and it's basically embarrassing a referee.
Yeah, I think that was actually a very good word. If there is an element of embarrassment that goes with that, that kind of clarifies some of that question around dissent, right? So with that said, one more question.
This is specifically for Scott and Joey.
Ooh, look at you two got fans and stuff.
I'm gonna stick it on the table.
All right.
Right? From a player and coach's point of view, what did you guys gain from tonight's discussion that might benefit the referees?
So I'm going to repeat the question. From a player and coach's point of view, what did you gain from the discussion that could benefit the referees?
I mean, I defer to Shane. I mean, I think you gotta follow all the guidelines and all the stuff you're taught, in classes. There's a lot more little nuances to, making these decisions. It's not so clear cut, but there's a great framework to follow, of, going about that process in your mind, whether you're gonna give out cards for dissent.
Mhm.
Just as a player, knowing, like, I would have known, not have known any of like the, what refs have to go through to decide the factors that go into their call. Just as a player, knowing that the refs have to, have to think about multiple factors, and I respect it a lot more, like how much is on their plate and how much they have to deal with going for the game, for the big game.
Yeah, and they have to make those decisions very quickly. And so what I think I'm hearing from both of you guys is like, hey, refs have to make split-second decisions around a lot of dynamics pretty quickly. And it sounds like that's what you guys took away. And I think for us as referees, one of the things that we can take away is a greater appreciation that these are players and coaches, and they don't know what we have to do and how we have to think about each play and how many plays in a row and how fast they happen. So being able to say, hey, this is what I saw, this is what happened, and use your personality to be able to deliver that message in a way that's respectful goes a long way with referees and coaches. Did I get that? All right, so we do have to stop. Thank you guys so much for joining us on our first ever live stream, live panel. And we want to remind you, every third Monday, Jenny, every third Monday, check your emails, make sure you sign up to get announcements for every education seminar. So with that, see you next month. Bye.